welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And me, Robbie.
And it is the beginning of our spooky season into Halloween. And also, this is a must-see horror as well.
It is.
And the one that's kind of crazy we haven't done.
Yeah, and I feel like it's been a while since we've done a must-see horror. We did loads of new releases recently. We did creature features for September.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's been a long time since we did it. Jaws was kind of a must-see horror, creature feature, book versus film.
Yeah. That was them all together.
That was them all together. But it is wild we haven't done this film.
No, it's mad. I mean, literally, like, the fact that we've gone around Halloween. I mean, literally, so we're going into Halloween season, and I was quite happy we did this one because, to be honest, without even realising, I'm not going to lie, Night of the Living Dead has almost become like one of my Halloween traditions. I've realised I have watched this film like nearly every year for a very long time.
I have watched it for years.
Oh really? I think I've nearly watched it since I first watched it. I think I've rewatched this. I think I remember watching it showing it to Charlotte like one of the first years we were together and being like, this is like, I think we did the double bill of Night of the Living Dead and Psycho.
Yeah,
it's like going for like classic horror.
It's
like, these are the cream of the crop of old classic horror like thing. And I don't know, there's something about it for me that like is perfect Halloween viewing. It 100%. Is perfect for this season. Watching Night of the Living Dead, it's hard for me to think of more iconic kind of Halloween kind of. I mean, there's Halloween, but I don't know. There's something about this that both fulfills almost my need at this time of year, where I kind of want to watch kind of the old, really older classic monster movies, but I also want to kind of still watch one that has that kind of holds up in a modern sensibility. And for me, Night of the Living Dead is not only has that kind of old classic horror charm of like the old monster movies, but it also somewhat is so relevant and so ahead of its time that it doesn't feel as old to me when I watch it. It has got that perfect balance. And I'm not even beating around the bushes. I think this is a fucking amazing film. Yeah. I literally think it's it is like right at the top of like, if I was doing a top 10 of horror of all time, it would be battling around other ones to be like top spot for me.
I mean, it's a fantastic film. And what I will say is we've got a great selection of kind of Halloween classics coming up for you over the month. And we're jumping decades.
We are.
So
this is starting in that
60s, that swinging 60s.
We've got that 70s, 80s, and
90s. Yes, we're going to start with kind of this season with bowl cuts like the Beatles, and by the end we're going to be like Kurt Cobain when he was alive. I think so. So if you want to make sure that you kind of get all those episodes, be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a lovely review. Just to be a data nerd, only about 25-30% of people who actually listen to the show are subscribers. So let's get that higher. Hit that subscribe button and get the episodes as soon as they're released. Now, for eagle-eyed viewers, or eagle-eared, I should say, if anybody's listened to our first episode, which is our top 5 horror memories, they may remember that I actually spoke about this film. And it's because this is actually the film that got me into horror movies. Yeah. So when I was young, and I vaguely remember it being around 97 or 98. So I would have been about 5, 6, pushing 7 maybe. The reason why I remember so well is that Kane had just debuted as a wrestler. And they're linked, these stories. He debuted in 1997. And we always used to get Monday Night Raw on Friday nights, so we would watch it Friday evening, me and my brothers. And on the other channel, I think the wrestling was on channel 20. Channel 21 was TCM, the classic movies. And one night, about maybe 10 o'clock during a break, they switched it over to TCM, and then they ran out of the room and they took the controller, they held the door closed, and this film was on. And I watched it and I cried. I cried for about 10 minutes. And then they flicked it back over to wrestling because it was wrestling. But it kind of got me hooked on horror, And there was this like feeling of just being so terrified that just kept me hooked and kept me coming back. And even now, like 25 years down the line, there were still moments of this film that get me, even though I kind of know it so well.
Know what's coming.
I know what's coming.
Yeah. I think this is one of those films that one is so specifically, obviously, character driven. You've got lots of moments, of zombie action in this film, but it is still the majority where you're drawn in, but by the suspenseful conflict of just the survival. It is purely that survival kind of film where you're on edge a lot of the time because they've generally set up several things that you're like, this could happen, or this could happen, or what's going down in the basement, or what is just outside, what's going to go wrong here. You have something with a zombie film. I mean, this is like the original zombie film. It's not
like the granddaddy of the zombie films as we know them. You know?
It literally is a film that made these kind of things that now are quite standard tropes in other horror films. This is their, this is their the suspense that builds up. So all of those things built to it. I mean, it is scary. Straight from the beginning, and even if you can say the way the zombies move or the way the zombies act or stuff like that, some people might say that maybe when you get a bit too close to them, they're not as scared of those. I don't think it takes from the fact that even from the very opening in the graveyard, you've got with Johnny and Barbara. Yeah, literally that. I literally said the classic quote 5 minutes ago, and now my brain was my brain just went bleh. Yeah. Of course, Barbara. With Johnny and Barbara, you've got that kind of stray, brother and sister arriving. Johnny seems a bit of a dick at times. He's playing with her, pranking his sister kind of thing. Going to the graveyard, visiting, and then that build up when you first get that one kind of iconic looking guy zombie who you first kind of see, who starts coming towards them and starts getting harshly towards them, and as the classic, he's coming for you, Barbara.
He's coming to get you, Barbara.
It's that
so good.
Classic line. But straight there from her being chased through thing, it's already kind of doing things that made it iconic kind of thing. Not just the lines, not just the tent, not just the shots, even ones the long road coming through. You say that and everyone always thinks the long road and they think Kubrick and The Shining, and here's this shot of them driving down the road, which is very Shining, because it's there. You can see the inspirations that have come there. All of these things, and it's also the way that you forget how many firsts that this film had, not that a female protagonist, but having someone who is one is a protagonist to begin with who's female, and then having a protagonist who's black, and then having several of these things, and then even the way the film deals with political issues, it's so interesting the way that they've built all of this into this little boiling pot of a film, where it is you're waiting for everything to go wrong. And it's that point of waiting of when is it going to come? When's it actually going to happen? We've got moments of terrifying things happening, but when's that going to come?
And there's just there's so many moments kind of scattered throughout it that just build the tension. So when they first get in there and they start kind of barricading the place, and Ben's no, it's secure, I think it's all good. When I can never remember most of the characters' names. When the guy comes out of the basement and he's that's where we need to be. The young guy, the young handsome man, is kind of well, if we go down there, we're not going to have any way up. And then the daughter who's been bitten, and I kind of feel this is something that it introduced, and we maybe took this for granted because we grew up with zombie films so much. So when we would have been growing up, we would have had Resident Evil being absolutely massive.
Shaun of the Dead,
Dawn of
the Dead, the remake, which is almost the original version that a lot of people, even some people of our generation, even knew. Zack Snyder's version before they would have ever known the original.
And we know that a zombie bite turns you, but I kind of feel back then, because the zombies that we had were very much that white zombie, old school voodoo kind of thing. The idea of being bitten and then succumbing and turning, that moment could have been such a massive shock to the audience. Now it's such a trope we expect somebody to get bitten, them to hide it, and them to turn later on. That's like, you're always looking for the shitbag who's doing that.
But it's like, that's what I mean. But it's the fact that this film is not even just like, oh, one of the characters. It's the fact that it's a child.
Yeah.
That they go straight for, you know what I mean? Like, this is almost feels like it's one of those things where people do a trope several times, then go, you know, we'll make it different this time, we'll make it a child. After it's happened several times, but they don't just go straight for, it's actually the child that's going to be the first one that we get to see having this transformation, which we didn't know about, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, not that, you know, you obviously you have characters that return later on, but the child is the first one we actually get that link of a bite makes them change, and it happens, and we hear about it on the news reports that happen on the TV screen, you know,
and that all kind of, and it all builds into you subconsciously.
Yeah,
is they're all kind of you first watching it, and you're, if you weren't aware of zombies, that's the problem with watching it now, is that zombies are such part of this, like, the cultural zeitgeist, that everybody knows what a zombie is. Like, if we had a zombie outbreak now, a lot, I mean, putting aside COVID, where a lot of people were fucking fools, people would be like, I know what to do. I'll just bash their fucking heads in. You know, and like, the people, when we were teenagers, we would spend ages talking about what we got to do if there's a zombie apocalypse. But we're not the only people who have had that conversation. Everybody probably has it. It's like a rite of passage. So watching this for the first time in cinemas must have been like mind-blowing, seeing some of this stuff.
I mean, it's also because I do think that this film is actually like quite a bit more like violent. For what was, if you think like you've had, like, not long before this, you've had you know, Psycho, which, you know, but it's not, Psycho is more about what you actually really don't see a lot of anything, you know, it's not really something you see, so that's one of the biggest horror films around those times. To then go to this in comparison, where you're actually seeing someone being, for instance, stabbed, or you're seeing people getting burnt or attacked and things like that, it is quite a different thing. I can't imagine how this film wouldn't have been absolutely terrifying the first time they saw it. I also think that this one, out of a lot of zombie films even to this day, still paints one of the most, what feels like one of the more realistic portraits of what might actually be the reality of a attack, kind of thing, like where people are going away, where media is kind of hyping it up in a weird way, you know, going on about it. You know, those I always forget the bits where they just basically for 1 minute just sit and watch the TV, and they're basically, you just get like several minutes of them showing exposition, of what's happening, but showing what's going on around the world, like what like the local sheriff's doing on the news, and
but it feels quite.
And it tells you like this, like a satellite had come down from, you know, and you get the first idea of how this might happen, of Venus? The radiation that's come back down from Venus, whether it's something that's come back from there, or the people that have come off of that, and like people started getting ill and things like that.
But even that's,
and the dead started raising from the, you know, the dead have started coming out of the ground and things, you know, those kind of things. It's all left a little bit open in that way. Like, even everything they're hearing on the news is a bit like, this could be it, but we're not quite sure yet, and this could be that, so it's all brand new.
And there's also kind of no real, and I guess it is kind of limitations of the time. Did you watch this in black and white, or did you watch colour? Which are you doing?
I always watch it in black and
white.
I don't think I've ever watched it in the colour version.
I've watched it in colour version, and it feels weird. Did you watch this on Amazon Prime?
No.
Don't. Because there's a... So I sat down and I was like, we're doing Night of the Living Dead. We got some great episodes coming up for the season. Some I haven't watched for some time. And I was like, Night of the Living Dead, I haven't watched it for years. Put it on, and it starts with some like hillbilly character, as in like not in the film. Like it almost like, you know, that American guy like Joe Bob something. He just like in the drive-in. We don't really get it here.
Okay,
he talks through it, and it's like that. And he's like, oh, this is not Land of the Living Dead. And he's talking about it. And I was like, okay, like, if this is just the opening, that's fine. It goes off and the film starts, and they've got that narrow bit. And then it goes, like, to the side, and he comes up again. And he's like, no, I like this shot when they're driving. And I was like, fuck.
That's on the Amazon version.
On the Amazon version. So I started skipping through, and maybe every couple of minutes, he pops up and just starts talking about it. And I was like, I can't watch a film like this.
No.
if there was a break halfway and he spoke a little bit and told some facts, I'd watch it. But it was fucking so weird.
I think I got this film originally for £1. In a shop. This because this is what this was. No, I think it was HMV.
Oh,
this is back when when they were fairly new. Like buying DVDs was still like a brand new kind of peak thing. I remember Shaun of the Dead was out, and I think I watched this one purely based on that knowledge of knowing like Shaun of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and being like, I'm kind of interested in like more zombie films. So I watched this one. I think I may have seen it on TV a little bit and stuff before, but I'd never like properly watched it. So I got it for like £1 in the shop because it was one of those ones that was always there because it was like out of licensing for a lot of production companies.
Yeah,
it's always been one that's like easy to get. I'm pretty sure you can just watch on YouTube now. To be honest, it's because it's like almost out of public.
I think it is. There's so many things
because you can make like people have like remade it in their own way and like things like that. It's been done so many different times, but never nearly as good. No. You've got the Savini one, which is interesting in its own for its effects in its own way. But I didn't really gel with it.
I generally tend to watch the Savini one.
Oh, really?
Because my thing with the Savini one is, it avoids what the Psycho remake did, where the Psycho remake was just a general shot for shot.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to bring this franchise up a lot in this episode. I may do, but it does what the Resident Evil remakes did, where it keeps the core of it, but it just does modern technology. So it just does, like, I think the performances are generally better. I think Tony Todd's great.
Better than Dwayne?
Than Dwayne, I think he is.
I don't think so.
I think so.
I watched it. I thought the dialogue was so shit. Like, that was my problem. I was, like, watching it, like, who the fuck's this lass? And she's, like, I thought her acting was so bad.
Well, she's more
Tony Todd
assertive.
Was okay. Tony Todd was alright, but he had nothing on this boy.
I thought he was better than Dwayne. The effects are just kind of done up, so it has the stuff of the original just done up. It's weird because the second time I watched Night of the Living Dead, I watched it on TV, and I put it on, and it was the Savini remake, but I didn't know about it, so I was like, oh, it's in colour, and I was like, this is so much more violent and bloody than I remember it being. And then I was like, it said 1990, and I was like, this is a fucking random ass remake. But yeah, I think I can't remember where we were originally.
I just remember I remember watching it but just not greatly enjoying it. I was like, I just thought that this is just a poor imitation of what they were trying to do. Like, like Savini's got a good thing, but generally I think it's regarded as a well like done in terms of like effects remake, isn't it? But it's not generally like regarded as like the best film.
No, of course.
The remake, I mean.
No, it's just like...
But like I get because Savini and what Savini does in a lot of the sequels and stuff, for instance, does amazing like effects. I only watched Day of the Dead the other day for the first time ever.
Oh,
I'd never watched it all the way through.
Day of the Dead's my favourite of them.
Oh really?
I fucking love Day of the Dead.
I find diminishing returns. I think Night of the Living Dead is by far the most interesting film. Dawn of the Dead has got a lot of interesting ideas. Day of the Dead has amazing effects and things, but I generally thought the story was kind of okay. And then Land of the Dead, which I actually I've only watched half of. I've only watched half of the other night after watching it once back in like 2005.
I had it on DVD.
And I remember thinking it was shit in 2005, but I've actually been enjoying it so far.
Oh, I enjoy it.
I've enjoyed the story and the thing actually more than I ever remember. I think Land of the Dead partially in my brain is probably because in my head I was comparing it to Dawn of the Dead.
That's it.
And it was the same round. Like it had the unfortunate of him making a sequel after Dawn of the Dead, which felt at the time like quite a revitalized way of showing the zombies and an interesting take. And I think at the time it felt like Land of the Dead felt a bit less fun because I'm not a big fan of the whole the zombies, when they start like showing the coming to understanding and those kind of parts. I just didn't generally enjoy it, but as much I didn't used to.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it more. I enjoyed what they did in Day of the Dead, and then Land of the Dead. I just always remember thinking the whole, them kind of following the traces and getting a really intelligent one, like becoming a bit like meh. But I've enjoyed it more than I remember enjoying it. Because I remember comparing it to Dawn of the Dead and being like, Dawn of the Dead was so much more fun than this. But again, now remembering all the Romero ones and seeing the kind of the social political undertones of some of it, it works better once I know all of the films, kind of thing. I think,
and I think that's it. I think it's like the evolution, and we were saying just before Twilight of the Dead, which will be interested to see where that ends up.
Yeah. You know? Yes, had the very the bad taste, as I said, in my mouth that I believe that Mila Djokovic has been cast in that film.
Yeah,
which I just don't like. I just don't think that she should be near a zombie franchise. No. I don't think she. I'm not sure. She's actually not a bad actress. I just think that she just has. It gives me the idea that this is not great. She doesn't have good taste in films, or doesn't get offered normally good films. So the idea that his final script is going to be adapted by the guy who made like The Machinist and Christian Bale, which was quite a well received film. I think he has made some other ones that are slightly less well received after that kind of thing. But I was like, oh, that sounds that if you're going to follow it, and if Romero's really bring the some goods to it to bring this to be an actual ending to this, what he wanted to make, then that should be amazing. But that gives me a slight worry about the film, because I don't know why, I just think even watching Mila Djokovic being in a Twilight of the Dead film will take me out of that film.
I will keep comparing it to Resident Evil, which was a franchise I was so excited for as a kid, and I really liked the first two. And then
it just got worse. It just got worse and worse and worse. It really did do damage to zombie films.
I was a fool, because I would be like, I'd watch one and I'd be like, oh, that's dog shit, and then the next one would come out and I'd be like, well, it can't possibly be that bad. Watch it, dog shit. It went more and more away from horror with each film, though. It went more and more into an action franchise as it went. I'm not saying the first one wasn't already an action one, but it did go more and more like, fuck the horror part of it. We're just here to see Mila Djokovic ride a bike through a burning building or something like that. And so much slow motion. Why? Same with Zack Snyder. Like, why? Do you have you only just discovered slow motion?
But he got worse with that as it went along. Dawn of the Dead was not nearly as bad for it as he went later on, and then fucking watching Superman's dong slowly fly past the screen.
It's just fucking slow.
Because it's that slow, it basically bumps into the screen at you.
and then it speeds to normal speed for 2 or 3 seconds, slows down, and you see his balls ripple, and you're like, do I need to see this?
Yeah.
And the film's 4 hours long. And if you got rid of if you got rid of it, it would be 40 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, the difference between the Dawn of the Dead to when he did what the hell was the one he did recently? Another of the Dead, kind of
Army of the Dead.
Army of the Dead. That's the one.
Which was enjoyable.
That was enjoyable. We did do an episode on that. that was enjoyable, but it did have a lot of slow motion shots.
I fucking love slow motion.
Yeah, he had a lot of those kind of things. So that was probably one of the few Zack Snyder things I've actually enjoyed in the last however long it's been. But
back to the film.
Night of the Living Dead. So I don't know. For me, this is I just love this film. I just find it hard to find one that's untouched by it. Even with Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, I just think that this film was such in terms of the message of one giving a higher kind of critique of the world. Dawn of the Dead also is fantastic for that, but I just think this one was the one that felt so of its time, especially with the whole, the rights of different people and how this is kind of showing how people are kind of seen differently, within America and stuff like that, and how the zombies kind of play into that role of this kind of invasion, but again, we've mainly got kind of a white invasion. You have that. I just think that this is such a well-made film generally. But here's a tidbit for you, that it was never originally intended to be a zombie film.
No.
Originally this was called, when they first came up with the idea of this was going to be an alien comedy.
What?
This came out. The original story was called The Mess, and it was about a bunch of hot rod riding aliens from space who arrived on Earth in order to kind of see the world and parts around it. And then John Russo and Romero. This was the original kind of concept that was came up with, that when they first wanted to make a film, they were like, we're gonna make this cool alien one, and then they went, right, we can't afford to make that film because we're brand new and no one wants to buy this film from us and no one wants to make this film. So then from there they tried to stay on with the alien theme, and they went with something that was kind of more about like an alien invasion that somewhat brings the dead to life. So basically a boy that discovers, like as he's out like in the middle of the countryside, he discovers basically a glass almost coffin, and underneath are the bodies, but they turn out to be like aliens.
Yeah.
And then that's when Romero like got the script from, you know, Russo, and he was like that. He was like, okay,
That
so we
sounds
can't
like
make
Life Force.
maybe it's an idea. And then, you know, these flesh-eating creatures that come alive out of the ground. And then from there, Romero went, well, I like the flesh-eating things coming out of the ground. Maybe we could do something with that. And that was the first thing that ever made the idea of Night of the Living Dead. So we almost had, instead of Night of the Living Dead, a film about hot rod riding aliens.
The mess.
The mess. It sounded like a mess, I'm not gonna lie.
Which
it's mad that though you came with like a what was meant to be kind of a bit of a horror comedy, a sci-fi horror comedy, that became like this social political kind of grounded dark film. The fact that they originally wanted to make more of a comedy is a weird thing.
Well, Joe Russo, who was the writer.
Yeah.
So after, because I think he definitely had a bit more of a comedy in mind. So after there was a bit of a legal battle about the name of the film, because Joe Russo, I believe he came up with the name. So he got to keep The Living Dead, whereas George A. Romero had to change it, which is why it's Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. And then you have Return of the Living Dead, which is Joe Russo's film in the 80s, which is a lot more horror comedy. But that also kind of does serve as a direct sequel as well. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen Return of the Living Dead. I remember enjoying that one.
It's great.
Even though it's a weird comedy, I really liked that.
It terrified me the first time I watched it. And it opens up with this canister, and they talk about Night of the Living Dead, and that this is one of the things that survived from it. So it does kind of lean that way, and maybe that was Joe Russo's influence to be like, why don't we do this weird alien comedy?
Yeah, I mean that could be where it's kind of come from, that kind of same area. But that was I found that an interesting little tidbit, that it was like that we almost had we never had this film.
Because there's like Dawn of the Dead, which we have covered if you want to listen to it, does have like a sense of fun to it. Day of the Dead.
It's a bit more of a comedy. Like this one is not that light-hearted.
There's not.
You know, it's not really light-hearted at all. It is a constant kind of quite grounded, dark kind of film for quite a lot of it, like purely survival. And I can't think of Dawn of the Dead without thinking of the whatever that, I can't remember what that's called, the song.
The something song, I can't remember.
Yeah, but that I can't think of it without more of the light-hearted comment, or Tom Savini riding in on a bike.
Or that guy getting doing his blood pressure.
Oh yeah,
and then getting eaten. Yeah, it's kind of weird to think like how they're connected, and you can see that the idea for this was quite different, because the one thing that I always forget is how heavy they do lead into the radiation.
Yeah,
which I'm guessing kind of stuff, you know. It kind of feeds into that whole 60s, 50s sci-fi thing where like nuclear power's got to be a big thing. Everything's got to be very futuristic, and the fears around
Russia, Cold War. Yeah.
And I always forget how heavily they lean into this whole thing of maybe it's radiation poisoning that's do that. Whereas in in Dawn, they're kind of like, well, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. And by Day of the Dead, they're just like, oh, we're fucked. There's like 100,000 zombies for every one person. So I forget about how they kind of lean into that. And also, when the zombie picks up the rock and smashes the window, they do these weird things that you can tell where they had an idea, and I don't think they planned it to kind of be as successful, because the zombies are scared of fire, and they're like smashing the lights on the car, and they seem a bit more kind of like a bit more human.
I think that is one thing that is, like, as I said, like, obviously the later ones talk about how they're almost coming back to their somewhat human intelligent and stuff like that in Day of the Dead and Land of the Dead. And say about this one, they do use tools, but they do actually use more tools than I'd say they do in Dawn of the Dead, which is when they're much more kind of just what we expect our standard zombie template is more around. Whereas these ones are slow moving, but you actually forget how much stuff they like grab, as if like they've only just changed, so they're still somewhat kind of with their former self in a way, like they're still using those things. Or whether you're going with more of like the caveman, as in they're going back to like the early kind of basics of like their knowledge kind of thing, to like a basic tools.
Yeah. I can pick up a stick and bang something.
Yes, I can smash this rock against this window.
Smash this rock. That's intelligent. You know? That solves all problems.
So I mean, obviously, I mean, it's a weird one with certain ones like even though we get Barbara as like the beginning, she's like a protagonist. Barbara. I mean, she's always a weird kind of annoying character. There's something about her because she opens the film with like running and screaming until she gets to the farmhouse, and then once she's at the farmhouse, and obviously once we meet Ben. And he's very much in control very quickly, and he's already like to get you away and like saving her. But after that, she basically becomes like a comatose thing. She is basically just in shock for majority of the rest of the film.
And it's so weird because a lot of the praise that the remake gets is making Barbara a lot more of an assertive character. There's even a point in the remake where she looks outside of the window and she's like, there's so few of them that we could just walk out and skirt by them. If we stay in the house, we're going to die. And it proves out that that's kind of Cub's right, but nobody listens to her. So a lot of people praise that. And I have this kind of to and fro about the original Barbara, because I understand that, like, if you were in that situation, not everybody is going to be as calm and collected as Ben. Like, Ben has his shit together. You'll have somebody who just freaks out. Like, if you think about, like, people who go to war, for instance, even if they haven't been trained, if they're, like, conscriptions, some of them just freak out when the shit hits the fan, because it's a human thing to do. People, like, seize up. And I like that it is quite reflected. But it's almost like this weird bait and switch where we're introduced to Barbara and we're like, oh, she's going to be our protagonist, and then once we get there, Ben kind of takes center stage, and Barbara, like you said, she just kind of becomes this borderline ditzy character.
Well, I mean, she's mainly just in shock for most of the film, I think.
Right until she sees her brother, I think.
I think it makes sense. It doesn't mean that it's not somewhat slightly annoying at times.
It's slightly annoying, but I kind of feel like...
But her brother's, I guess, it's like when you think, like you just said, like, her brother's just died. She's just witnessed a weird thing that he's, attacking her, whatever she thinks that is. And then by the time she somewhat starts to pull herself back together, when she starts to, like, look around, when these other characters start to pop up, then she starts to see the real fact that they're actually being surrounded by these zombie things. And then she sees some weird shit, and then she kind of goes back into the comatose. Which I kind of get it. I think she's traumatized, and she's like stuck, and I think it works. I mean, at the same time, as much as it is like that, it's not the first time that at that point in time where you have a female protagonist, and it's not the first time we've had a black protagonist, but the black protagonist was much less common at that point in time. So I think having Ben like take over makes it quite strong, and I know from little like tidbits and stuff that he was written originally as a I was trying to actually get the actor's name up, and I just looked at the completely wrong bit. It's Dwayne Jones. Dwayne Jones as Ben. I was mixing up the name, saying that he was Dwayne his character when he's Ben.
Mr. Ben.
Dwayne Jones in the original script was written as like an angry truck driver, very like overly impulsive and kind of like almost more of a character that sounds like you'd kind of want to be offed at some point.
Kind of like the other guy.
Yeah, a bit more like Harry, I think. And he's in the script he was written much more as a kind of slightly more antagonistic, which is why the fight with Harry would have been a bit more like antagonistic from both sides. Yeah. Whereas in that one, like Ben is much more to the point.
Yeah,
he's kind of no messing around. We're just getting on with this kind of thing. And the actor Dwayne Jones actually basically just rewrote a bunch of his own lines. He just went, this isn't real. This isn't what I would say. This isn't what I would do. So this is why I've got such a thing for Dwayne Jones as like the acting in the film, because he basically went to Romero and went, this isn't like a true of what, you know, like an African American would say.
Yeah.
This isn't true of what an actor, like person at this time would say, and I don't think this is what I would do, you know. And I don't want to be this. He didn't want to be pegged as just this kind of off-key character. I think he saw that this was quite a big kind of thing for him to be kind of almost the protagonist in this kind of film, and he didn't want it to be just put down to tropes and stereotypes of what a character could be. So he redid a lot of his own dialogue, and even Romero and Russo have said on thing that he actually came up with a lot of ideas of his own character and his own thing. And I think just seeing the way he acts in this film, he's the one character I do think comes across most naturally. Like he
comes along great. Him and Harry's performances are awesome.
Yeah, the way that him and Harry like fight off each other and stuff. But it's the same even with the Harry character, who feels a lot more man of his time, like American, like almost like you'd expect him to jump out of an American sitcom or something like that in a weird way. Like, but he also seems very true to like he is just a guy who is way out of his depth, and all he's thinking about is protecting his family. Yeah, he's thinking he's got a daughter who's downstairs who's ill and a wife who's trying to look after it.
His hot
and
wife.
He's very much
I always forget how hot his wife is.
Compared to Harry, it's like, hey, how do you get hurt? Like that. Yeah, Ben should just go downstairs and he's like,
take your door.
Lock you up. But yeah, so he's trying to protect. He's just a guy who's trying to protect his family, but he's also very much of his time.
Yeah,
you know, he seems very much like I am the man. I should make the right choices. I should be the one to tell.
But it was it was 1968. Like there's the bit where Ben just fucking slaps Barbara, and it's like, this is our hero, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
clap her. And it's
I mean, I think she needed a slap.
Well, you know, in that situation,
she was in a major shock or something. She needed something to snap her out of it. You know.
Yeah, in that situation, you might be like, she needs to snap out. You hit her, then you're like, it's the 21st century. I can't be doing that. It's 2025.
But the other thing I often forget with this film, I mean, you know, obviously there's a lot of the scenes of them like being barricaded inside the house and like seeing things outside the window. I mean, I love, obviously, as you get the more and more zombies that just start appearing, it's so cool. But one of the things I did kind of forget is how many shots you do actually get. I actually forgot you get a lot of actual like them eating bits and body parts and stuff like that, which I almost always seem to forget that is in there, because I'm so used to seeing that I always do think that this is a tamer film than I actually think for the time it actually is.
That's what we flicked onto when we watched it. Was them eating, and I was like, fuck.
So is that following?
It's after the young couple explode.
Yeah,
I can't remember their names. But I always remember him blowing up in the car, but I never remember her being with him. Tom.
Yeah. Tom and Judy. Yeah.
Good old American boy.
I couldn't remember what happened to Judy. So I was mixing it up in my head of what happened and whether Judy was, because Judy was kind of left down in the basement. So Judy like comes up and she doesn't have many lines in the film.
No, she doesn't.
She's not up there for a long time. Like Tom's up there and like Harry's up there, and they're both downstairs with the door with the little girl. And I completely was like, what happened to Judy? I was like, how did she die? At one point I was thinking that she was killed by the girl in the basement. Yeah. That she was actually like, because I seem to remember that like when you go in the basement, like the first reveal of the door is almost that she's already eating someone down in the basement.
Yeah.
And I thought, is it Judy that she's already eating? Because there's the scene when obviously they tell the wife to come upstairs and they tell Judy to go downstairs and look after the daughter. And I was like, so she's the one that like the daughter wakes up and just starts basically going for the neck or something like that. I thought it was something like that. So I was sat there like, how does she die and stuff like that. So when they decide to come up with this whole plan that they're going to get the we see early on when Barbara runs past the gasoline tank of the thing, that we're gonna we're gonna get the car and we're gonna get in, we're gonna drive up to the house. We've already had some cool. I do love when Ben's like he's doing the house, but he does the whole the distraction, like he sets the chair on fire and throws it out outside. Like those kind of little scenes that kind of like bring them, which is weird because they're scared of the fire, and yet it's at the same time it also seems to somewhat be like, let's go check this out. So it seems to somewhat go against the point because it actually brings more of them to the house, I think, than it takes away.
And that brings them back to that kind of like universal like voodoo zombie kind of thing where the fire keeps them away. It's very old school.
It is, but at the same time, because even like, for instance, when the truck explodes, that big fire you think should scare them off, but no, it actually like brings more of them forward because they're like,
I guess it's the noise and the kind of they see one and they're like,
he brings that in Land of the Dead, where one of the distraction tools they use is fireworks in the sky because they all get so like by the fireworks that they can actually get around them because they're all so distracted by the fireworks and stuff. One of those little tidbit that comes later in the franchise, but. So when we get Tom and Judy, so when they go out into that truck, I just always forget that this all seems suddenly quite violent, even though you don't literally see them at first like explode. You see them go out, and I think it's a shocking death because I think they're set up as two people like that, and you almost think, they could get attacked, they could get things like that. It's just the way it plays out that when it actually like they get out there and you see the trail coming along and it just goes boom. It's like, oh fuck. Like they're all in shock in the house and in there, but then you get a shot of charred corpses.
Yes.
And this is the bit where I was like, okay, but again, so far not too grotesque or not too thing. And then you start seeing them pull out the parts of the fried bodies that have exploded, and you start seeing them pull out guts. First thing they pull out is a foot. They pull out literally all these parts, and you just see them start scranning. And I was like, fucking hell. The people who saw that for the first time must have been absolutely terrified. Like feasting on humans and stuff like that. It's like, fuck.
What the fuck is this?
You know what I mean? Like, you think of things like that became like huge, like controversial, like Cannibal Holocaust and things like that, where they're flesh on humans. But this is like one of the first times where it's literally like, this is people literally. This is humans eating humans.
Yeah, and I think not a lot of people are able to kind of, or don't make the distinction between like violence and gore.
Yeah,
and I always feel like violence is what's kind of implied or what goes on in your head. Like the mother's death. That's quite a violent death. You don't really see much. It's very psycho in how she's stabbing her with the trowel.
But you do actually see it go into her, though, which is a slight distinction again, which is what I thought in my head. I was like, it's psycho. Like it was just, you see the girl like stabbing at her, but you don't actually see her get stabbed.
You see like the face reaction.
Yeah, it is mainly the face reaction and the girl going at her.
But then there's the gore, which is them eating the bits of body, and it's
her actually eating her mother. So and all the blood that's going down her mother, because again you get more of a splatter, which almost more reminded me of like the opening of Halloween.
A little,
when you see like you don't fully see the shots, but you see enough that you start seeing like the blood coming out. But you don't really see as much as you think you do. It's got a bit more of that, where it's got more of the gore than I think you ever see in like say Psycho or you ever saw, because really you never really actually see anything except for the blood going down the drain. You never really actually see a knife going in or any of that
you
stuff.
See it at all.
No,
I believe, and I don't know, I might be wrong on this, but I think Tom Savini was originally like hoping to work on Night of the Living Dead, because by then he was kind of very early doing special effects, and I think he was doing. I think I read that he wanted to do it, but then he ended up getting drafted to go to Vietnam, and then that's why he said like I want to take on directing the remake, because I originally wanted to be there and I couldn't be.
Yeah.
So now I want to do it. And then Tony Todd was like real insistent with getting the role, and apparently like turned up at his house every day or turned up at his office every day. But that's a story. Should we ever kind of do the 1990 one? We may do. You never.
I'm
know.
sure we will. I'm sure we'll hit on those different ones. I mean, I feel like we probably need to do Day of the Dead first.
Definitely. So I think what other kind of main parts happen? Because obviously the daughter turns, kills the mother, which is a great scene.
I mean, that's like one of the most shocking scenes at that point in cinema. That must have been one of the most shocking scenes. One, a child turning and becoming like violent like that. But then it's the fact as well. Like, there's so many ways it could have been. It could have literally just been they came down and the child is eating the mother or something. Even that could have been just a thing. But it's the fact that they take the extra, like, again, using tools.
Yeah.
The child picks up a trowel and literally stabs her mum repeatedly.
Yeah.
And then she eats her.
And
you know what I mean? And then the reaction of coming downstairs to see that fucking hell, like that, you've eaten, she's being eaten, is another like major like shocker. And it all comes to fit. Like, it's not like this is an overly complex. I think the simplicity is kind of, again, what makes it work, is that it is, like I said before, like that boiling pot kind of a film.
Yeah.
Like, they're all trying to survive. There's a lot of different people all in a small space, and that this isn't really going to work. They're not. A lot of them aren't on the same wavelength.
Tension.
A lot of that kind of, why don't you just stay downstairs then? You lock, like, he's like, I'm going to lock myself in the basement and we're going to stay down here, which really doesn't last long at all. Literally, he locks the door and we're going to stay down here. And it's where it's like 2 seconds later, he talks to his wife for like a minute and goes, yeah, they've got a radio upstairs. Maybe let's go back upstairs.
Change our mind.
And then they change their mind and up they go. But again, so it all kind of builds to the head of when, after the trucks exploded, which has drawn even more of them in after they've feasted on Tom and Judy.
Yeah, random.
They've literally they've decided, and they start coming onto the house, and they're getting starting to attack. And it happens, like many of these, it happens very quickly. Once that break happens, once that window and door goes, they're kind of in there. Barbara's offed very quickly.
I always forget that's what happens to Barbara.
Yeah,
because they parody it in Shaun of the Dead with Dawn from The Office, her going out after her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I always forget that's what happens to Barbara.
Yeah.
That she gets a kind of off.
Her brother comes back and kind of grabs her and drags her out, kind of thing.
Yeah,
she's
always
taken
forget
off.
about that.
Yeah, it's really quick. But I like the fact that it's like that. That it just she kind of comes and then goes. It's kind of a comes back around on it kind of thing.
Yeah.
She did all of that to avoid, like, basically being chased by like her brother / the zombie, and then it's come back around and brother's come back
Can't
for
get
her.
away from it. Yeah. And the actor who plays her brother's great.
Yeah.
I know it's Bill Moseley in the remake, and both of them are just so good. And it's an iconic look with those big glasses, the big overcoat and the gloves. I can't remember the actor's name, but yeah, when he comes back and then she kind of gets dragged out. It's just a part that I never remember. I just instantly assume that she survived.
Her fate. Yeah, I mean, it's quite easy. I don't know why I do remember. I don't know. I think I was kind of like, the first time I watched it, I think I was kind of shocked by it. So I think I do remember that death more than some of the others.
Yeah.
To be honest, I am blanking on Harry's though.
Well, Harry gets.
Harry's part of the daughter, isn't it?
Yeah, he gets gut shot by Ben.
Yeah.
He goes for the gun. He wrestles it off him.
Oh yeah. Then he makes his way down into the basement.
Yeah.
And then he sees what's happened to his wife, and then his daughter comes for him, doesn't he?
Yeah. Because then when Ben does decide to go down into the basement, kind of right at the end when he's overwhelmed, which again, it's just that's the terrifying thing, it's that you have one zombie and you're like, man, I could probably deal with one zombie. And then you take your eye off it, and then there's 2, and then there's 4, and then they're all around you, and then they're closed in on you, and it's that feeling of being. I'm a person who doesn't like being in closed spaces anyway. Those you ever see the caving videos?
Yeah.
You gotta be fucking cooked to do one of them. It's like the worst thing. That and water are my most terrifying things. So the thought of just being surrounded relentlessly. Because you can't go to
that's it. That's what I mean. Like, out of a lot of the deaths that you can have, I mean, there are some fucking, like, across the franchise, there are horrible deaths. I'm not gonna lie. There are horrible ways to die. I mean, to be honest, out of all those, like Tom, for instance, and Judy get a pretty fast death. That would be your one of choice, because I can't imagine Barbara gets much nice because she's taken out by all of them. Barbara probably gets closer to like fucking
close to Captain Rhodes.
Yeah, she gets one of them. She probably just gets torn apart outside. So she probably gets one of the worst deaths, to be honest.
Probably.
Mum's death obviously is not great, but the idea of being, like you get in some of the later ones, when you do get to see people like Captain Rhodes or, those kind of ones where they are literally being taken apart and torn apart bit by bit there. The idea of being surrounded and stuck and just coming to your end of your life knowing you're going to die and then being eaten bit by bit by bit. Like sounds like one of the worst ways to die.
In Dawn of the Dead, when he's in the elevator.
Oh yeah.
And it opens up and they're all there.
Yeah.
There
are it's one of the horriblest ones when they are literally like torn apart. There's some really horrible. In the franchise. There's ones outside the
Resident Evil.
Yeah, Resident Evil deaths. Walking Dead. The Walking Dead has some absolutely horrible. There's one that happens to that literally stuck with me, which is what is his name? Tyler James. He was Everybody Loves Chris.
Yeah.
So he was in it, and there's one of the deaths that he gets where basically he tries to get through like the revolving doors.
Yeah.
And I think one of them locks the doors on him. And then literally the zombies come behind him, grab his face, and literally tear the skin from his face, and you literally see his whole body getting like literally bit by bit torn apart. And it's so fucking violent that I was like, Jesus Christ, like that one stuck with me, because I was like, one, he's a nice guy, nice character, a kind of a likable like actor anyway, and just seeing the way that they offed him in such a sudden like fucking like dick move by one guy to just trap him in the door and be like, that's it, you're stuck. And just seeing him get like literally like screaming as he gets his whole body like face torn apart. It's like fucking hell.
I watched
those are the worst ones. The idea of being trapped in a small space and being literally obliterated by them, I think is the worst. Literally, that would be on like anything tearing me apart like that would be on your top of your ways, and you don't want it. You don't want to die bit by bit being taken apart.
Oh, of course.
I think burning is probably my all-time if I just don't want to burn to death. But,
burning and drowning. Two opposites. Both equally horrid.
Yeah. Or burning while drowning. Being boiled in a pot sounds pretty fucking horrible.
Or like you're choking on something and you're drowning like that way, and then you get set on fire.
Yeah.
It's fucking horrid. And everybody's like, "Oh, he burnt to death," and well, he drowned. Yeah. There's like an argument, like that thing with the dress. Is it like black and blue or white and gold? And they're like, did he drown or did he burn? Big debate. And I'm just dead. Choke on it. But yeah, I think it culminates in such like just a terrifying way. And all of the films, apart from, you haven't seen Land of the Dead, but apart from Land of the Dead, they all have this.
I have seen it. I just don't remember. I don't remember what happens in the end of Land of the Dead, but I have seen it before.
So, I mean, spoilers for very old films. Dawn of the Dead, they kind of fly away in the helicopter, but they're low on fuel, I think.
Yeah.
So it's kind of implied that probably they don't survive. Day of the Dead, kind of very similar. They helicopter away, but on a beach, but there's so little people around, it's kind of not really going to last forever.
Yeah.
Land of the Dead has a slightly hopeful ending where, like, the zombies take over the city. However, the people leave, and then the zombies are like, "This is our home now." So they stay there, and they have like a moment where they start to turn and go their own way. I can't remember how Diary of the Dead ends. However, I remember Survival of the Dead had a hilarious ending where I don't know if you watched it, but
no, I haven't watched Diary or Survival.
Diary I enjoyed. I
just don't count them as like proper.
Diary's fun, and Diary has a weird moment where the people in it get robbed by a group of people, and they're the same people who are the main characters in Survival of the Dead, I think.
Right.
It kind of crosses over in a weird way. But Survival of the Dead is about these two families on this island, and they kind of they don't really coexist. They have like a feud between them, and then a zombie gets onto the island somehow, and the families are at war whilst trying to fight these deads, and the heads of the families that hate each other both end up getting turned into zombies, and it ends with those two just stood opposite each other, just shooting each other constantly. And it's so funny. It's like, even though dead, they go to that base instinct of hating each other.
Yeah.
So all of the films generally have like a pretty down ending.
Yeah, I think so. I think that this is the biggest downer of the bunch, because the other one, like the helicopter going down, is like still left open somewhat.
It's open, isn't it?
Day of the Dead is somewhat left open. Land of the Dead, they're all kind of left open. This is pretty. This is brutal. And also, but brutal, but also again, I think there's the difference between but this one ends on something that feels again like it makes the most kind of maybe historical point, most iconic kind of one of the most iconic endings of a horror film, where you've literally followed this guy surviving the entire film only for the fucking and it's it's weird that it's like the sheriff, the police, to shoot the guy dead. As if they think that he's a zombie inside there. He's checking out the window. They don't even go in to check. They just go get that, and then it's just the fact it's so quick. He's just like, oh, that, and the guy shoots him, and you just see him hit the ground dead. And then it's like in that. But and also, it's not just that bit. It's the fact that it then has the whole. You then play out for the rest of the whole credits. You play out. They're getting the hooks to drag the bodies, and you see that he's been put on a hook. He's dragged to the fire, and then you see the fire burning, and it all feels so horribly symbolic of some of the terrible things in America, towards black people and things like that. It all feels too close to that kind of feeling, and I think I've got another little thing about Dwayne Jones again, kind of adding a lot to the film, because he fought against an alternate ending for Ben. So obviously, that's one of the most important things. But I convinced George that the black community would rather see me dead than saved. After all that had gone on in a corny and symbolically confusing way, the heroes never die in American movies. The jolt of that and that double jolt of the hero being black seemed like a double-barreled whammy.
It is.
So and I think it is. It makes it have that extra impact, and it kind of sets the tone for the darkness and gloom that will come into the future movies, even though each one kind of takes on a bit of a tone of its age.
Yeah, of course.
This is very much still feels like a 60s movie, and somewhat feels like it's even aching back to 50s or 40s kind of monster movies.
Yeah, it feels even a bit vintage, like it doesn't feel like it came out in 1960.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was quite close to this, the 70s as well, and then again, Dawn of the Dead feels very much again of its time, of when it was made, and and again that one's more about consumerism. And then Day of the Dead feels very 80s, style, music, all those kind of things, and again takes on a different kind of part of it about the way that the world is looking at itself, and the way we seem to be very about the way that they look at death in that film, and the way they think about how it is, and how people seem to be almost with new technology almost playing God, in some ways, that one has. Which is a way of, again, I think, and Land of the Dead is a bit more modern and things like that, and and I think some people said that was the one that's in some ways lost a little bit of the political edge of all of them, where it didn't seem to be quite as obvious as the earlier ones.
I actually think it's more obvious.
I think that one.
Yeah, I think because it makes it very clear. It's quite a dystopian film.
Well, it has about class is a major part of that one.
Class and wealth, but it's almost like very on the nose. It's like there's the getting in the main bad guy is getting in bottles of wine imported.
Oh yeah,
and it's the cost of people's rent, and people are struggling to eat and stuff like that. And I think if anything, that's the one that's this is really on the nose.
Yeah, no, but that's what I mean. But it's not got the thing is, the other ones kind of subtly embed it into.
That's what I mean.
That's what I think. Yeah, I did speak poorly there. I think I spoke poorly there, because I feel like the other ones This one so subtly laces it in with the themes and almost makes it part of the horror.
Yeah.
And that's also, again, with Dawn of the Dead, and then I think, again, in parts it has horrific parts in it. I think Day of the Dead had that as well. I didn't feel it quite as much subtly in that one, and then Land of the Dead, I think it, like you're saying, and I haven't watched all that again, so it hasn't fully hit me on the face yet, but I do think, like, when I saw the whole thing about the class and the wealth, and I was like, yeah, this one feels a little bit more laid on thick than the other ones, but it doesn't feel like it's subtly dealt with it in the same way. It doesn't feel like the themes are like well immersed into what makes it scary.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the other three, that idea is what kind of adds to the horror.
Well, I think it's the unfortunate thing of those genre heroes. So George A. Romero, Tobe Hooper, John Carpenter. It gets to turn of the millennium, and their films just aren't really there anymore. You know, like I think all of them kind of did a film early. I mean, I think Tobe Hooper did a bit later, but they all did films in the 90s where they maybe started to lose their footing a little bit, and then the output in the early 2000s was like John Carpenter did The Ward. I know Tobe Hooper was unfortunately doing like direct-to-video, and then George A. Romero did Land of the Dead.
He did Ghost of Mars.
He did Ghost of Mars.
That was early 2000, wasn't it?
That was 2001. I always feel, but it feels like a film from like 1996.
Because then after that, it was like 10 years, and I think 2011 was The Ward. I think they pushed that.
Really, 2011.
Yeah, he did that later.
2007 or something. 2011.
No, I think he did it later. That was like quite late that he did it, because that's one of his last ones. Because that was like Amber Heard, and she wasn't really big until late, like 2010s kind of thing.
But no, she did. The first film that she did was All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, and I think they recorded it, filmed it, and then released it like 5-6 years after it had been released for some reason. I don't know why.
I mean, we've talked before about the sad kind of the way in which, like, literally almost the genre defining horror directors of the 60s and 70s that kind of almost made all of what horror is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, as much as, a lot of them took things from, like Hitchcock and the monster movies from the 40s and 50s, and that was that originally like got them, or Howard Hughes making the original thing that inspired like John Carpenter to make the actual, what we consider him as the real thing. You know what I mean? Like, but those directors made what is the modern gore level, the modern psychological horrors. Like, they are the ones that made that. And we've said before about how sad it is that, say, for instance, like, the fact that someone like George Romero didn't really get the money to make, like, Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead came almost more out of the fact that he didn't have the budget to make the level that he wanted to do for Twilight of the Dead.
Yeah, which is
he wanted Twilight of the Dead to be of the budget of like Land of the Dead and things like that, but they did Land of the Dead. Land of the Dead was not as successful as they thought it would be.
Yeah.
Coming after Dawn of the Dead and Shaun of the Dead, it was kind of looked at as an outdated horror compared to
a bit of an old man's kind of film.
Yeah, we've had 28 Days Later, we've had Dawn of the Dead. Zombies are now quick moving and now faster, and now things like, not that Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead is very loving of Romero,
but it's
so
comedy,
much that film
it's
is
parody, so it
felt
doesn't
fresher
really
in its own way.
Yeah,
because they do a cameo in Land of the Dead.
Yeah.
Just to throw that in there. I just watched it last night. I remembered that. I was like, oh, there's Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg.
Yeah, I always remember that.
Just one other little tidbit I was going to throw into this one is, because we talked about it before, and then I forgot I had an actual point for this one. Public domain. So about Night of the Living Dead, we said about that, and I was always wondering what it is. So Night of the Living Dead is in the public domain because of an error in the credits. So, Night of the Living Dead obviously is one of the most famous public domain movies of all time. The amount of people that have redone it, and but it was never meant to go so directly to that, because it shouldn't actually. Because public domain, it was only made in the 60s odds. Film things that were made like Mickey Mouse.
100?
Mickey Mouse, so like Mickey Mouse, the original Steamboat Willie, which is over like 100 years old. You know, that's only just come into public domain. So Night of the Living Dead shouldn't be in the public domain. The Walter Reed organisation, which distributed the film, wanted to release it under the title of Night of the Flesh Eaters.
Okay.
But lawyers representing the makers in 1964, The Flesh Eaters, threatened a lawsuit. So the title was changed to Night of the Living Dead. When the title changed, though, copyright notices were not added to the opening titles or the opening or the end credits of the film.
Okay.
They forgot to put copyright onto the film. And though the filmmakers have fought in federal court, the film is still in the public domain.
Oh, wow.
So literally just by an error of changing a title, they forgot to add the copyright for the name of the film, which is why there's multiple films called Night of the Living
There's so
Dead.
many of them.
And Night, have used that title because, again, so if you look at the actual credits in the film, there's no copyright. So
Never
you forget
noticed.
to do a copyright and you get no money for that. So
Yeah.
no, that's the other thing. Like all the money that they could make off of Night of the Living Dead, like even IP merchandise, like none of that's there because they didn't copyright the film.
Wow.
So that's a bad thing.
Yeah, that's
We're
right.
going to remake Night of the Living Dead just for the sake of it. You know, we're going to do the opposite in those sense. We're going to make a white man the protagonist. 'Cause that never happens.
That's never happened in a movie.
That's never been done.
No women either.
None of that. No, we will play all parts.
Just me and you. All
Just
parts.
me and you.
All zombies, characters.
I'm going to be Ben. You're going to be Barbara.
No, we're gonna do like. Have you seen the Mitchell and Webb sketch where they do where they have two famous actors and they're making a film of Sherlock Holmes, and neither of them are conceding to be Sherlock and Watson, so they agree that every time it changes scene, they'll swap. So like they walk out of the room and one's Sherlock and then he walks back in, he's Watson.
I'm thinking more Lethal Weapon with Always Sunny.
Yes.
But they keep wanting to be different people want to be Murtaugh.
We just keep switching.
And we keep seconds. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, this brings me on to the final question. Would be: is it must-see horror? You know, we have to ask this. It's a formality. It's like being read your Miranda rights.
I mean, I didn't think of the fact, like you said with Jaws and stuff, where we've actually done several films that are on the must-see horror list, but we've not actually said. There's a few films out there where, even though they were on the list, we never actually said this is a must-see. I mean, and I feel like with Jaws and with this film, it's like a non-question almost, isn't it? Because it's like, of course, it's a.
Yeah, of course.
It's one of the defining films. The same way Jaws, this is the defining zombie film in many ways. It was the original. It's the one that led, and whether your tastes go more dawn, more day, or maybe more land,
Maybe, yeah.
maybe or if you like the remake of Dawn of the Dead and you prefer the fast zombies or things like that, you can't help but define that this is the one that really made it. This is the one that I think, out of all of them, nails the social commentary, nails the dark tone, and nails I just like the original zombie, the original one, the zombies in this film. I like that classic original crawling zombies. Between this and Dawn of the Dead, they're my favorite type. They're my favorite two zombie, like the way they show them, in these films. I think Romero zombies are still not touched by the infected zombies we get or the fast moving zombies. I still think the original crawling zombies are the most terrifying, the ones that slowly get you, the same way that the same way that I think that Michael Myers is the most scary horror icon because you never know where he's going to pop up. You know what I mean? And these zombies are the same. They just keep coming and they have no reason to stop and they have no reason to go, but they don't seem, when you look at them individually, they don't seem that terrifying. When you see them growing and growing like you see in this film, it becomes more horrifying as the film goes on, where you start to be like, one minute they look outside and now there's only a couple of them, and then the next minute they look outside and fucking hell, the house is like surrounded by them.
And it is one of those films that has gone on to kind of define horror movies. You can't have a zombie movie without having George A. Romero's DNA in it. And I would have loved to have seen his Resident Evil. I read the script when I went to Cyprus one time, and it sounded like a very interesting movie. It didn't sound particularly amazing, but I would have loved to have seen it because the man knew what to do with zombies. He knew how to play them.
and his zombies are like literally like Resident Evil was definitely taken from the Romero zombie.
He shot the trailer for Resident Evil 2. You know,
Did he?
Yeah. If you watch it on YouTube, I think it's only about 4 or 5 minutes long, but it really gives you an insight into like maybe what he would have done with a Resident Evil film.
Yeah,
because it's so good, you know, and it really gets you hyped for it, you know.
I mean, it would have been class to have him do that. It would have been better. It would have been better than what we got.
Oh, definitely.
You know what we've had so far. You know, as much as there's an entertainment or enjoyment, and you know, to ones we've had with Resident Evil, we still have not had like a definitive version of a Resident Evil film. No. I don't think. Zach Cregger maybe. He might do, but he's doing his own thing with it though, from the sounds of it. So you know,
let's find out.
But it might be the right universe.
Yeah. Anything else to say?
No, I mean, must-see horror. I mean, it'd probably be in one of my top of must-see horrors. The only thing I'm thinking in my head is we have said coming soon around, we've said we're not going to reveal all the films we're doing yet. We'll keep those up. Next week we're hitting the 70s.
We are.
For our next one. We've also said about we're going to do a little kind of talking of must-see horrors. All of the ones are going to be must-see horrors of this season. In some way, I believe.
I think they are. I think they're all
must-see horrors. Ones that we are surprised probably that we haven't done. I think every single one is like, how did we not do these films?
They're all the big hitters.
They are big hitters coming at you. So ones that I think everyone probably wants to revisit around Halloween time anyway.
That was the idea.
And we were also going to do a little kind of must-see, like almost of a what are our favourite must-see kind of ones coming up. Yeah. A little kind of talking about, ones we're excited about. So that might be when we fill in some of those gaps of like, have we actually said whether this is a must-see horror or not? We might have missed a few, so we'll have a look back through this.
We will.
And remember what we are, because at this point we're forgetting what we've done.
The way it is, I mean, 5 years.
Every time we say like this, like Night of the Living Dead, I'm like, we must have fucking done that. And I literally scroll back through every single of the 200 episodes and go, we didn't fucking do Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, we haven't done it.
Yeah, there's so many films that have now come up. Like, if it's a big hit, where I'm like, we must have done that one. Surely we've done that one. So many like classic horrors. I'm like, how have we not? Yeah. How have we done Death Race 2000 and not fucking Night of the Living Dead?
I don't know, man, but that's the way she rolls. You know. I mean, come and let us know your thoughts on Night of the Living Dead. If it's a must-see horror, I'd be really interested to hear from people who think it isn't. That'd be interesting. So you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast. As always, remember to hit that subscribe button and please leave us a lovely review. We've got plenty of films coming up for you as we enter the spooky season. And we will see you next time. Play us away, boys.